Hello and good evening to Dr. Shri and our class. We are from Group 6. The topic is the status of paddy and rice industry by Cambodia. Introduction. In the paddy rice production, Cambodia has a large potential to increase its mild rice production. In 2010 to 2011, paddy production could reach 7.3 million tons after a remarkable rebound over the past decade. Rice is mainly produced during the wet season, but the dry season for the harvest is an increasing component. The economy of Cambodia is primarily based on the agriculture sector, which accounts for 27% of the national GDP and 65% of the labor force. Rice production is crucial to this sector, and not only does the majority of Cambodian farmers rely directly and indirectly on the annual performance of the rice crop, as it is the main staple of the food industry, but rice production is also a major factor in the national effort to promote the food security. Asia Sea. For Asia, more than a third of the world population, mainly in Asia, depend on rice as a main dietary staple. The Asian rice growing area is bordered on the east by Japan and on the west by Pakistan. There are three geographical sub-regions in the region: East Asia, Southeast Asia, and South Asia. East Asia lies mainly north of the Tropic of Cancer in the temperate climate. Three major rice-growing nations, China, Japan, and Korea, are included. Burma, Indonesia, Laos, Cambodia, Malaysia, the Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam are eight major rice-growing countries in South Asia. Five big rice-growing countries are in South Asia, including Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, India, Nepal, and Pakistan. Techniques that their forebears may not have known, such as pesticides and tractors. Farmers technically use a combination of traditional and modern practice, emphasizing those that increase yields per hectare. Mechanized farmers use less than 100 man days per hectare in Taiwan and the Punjab to produce the same yield. For ASEAN, member states of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations or ASEAN plays a major role in the global rice market. The gross intake of rice by ASEAN account for 22% of the world's total. ASEAN rice consumption is expected to rise from 100.0 million tons in 2011 to 111.3 million tons in 2021 over the next decade, achieving 1% annual growth. The mean per capita consumption of ASEAN rice is 2.5 times the world average. Adequate supply and fairly priced rice are also vital for ASEAN's food security. Despite the current strong competitor from other major exporters of rice, in particular India, it is anticipated that Thailand will return from the baseline as the top exporter. In ASEAN countries, rice is the main food staple and therefore plays a significant role in the region's issue about food security. In some main Asian countries where rice is considered as an inferior commodity, increasing revenue dampen rice demand.
Hello everyone, my name is Tan Kuan Lim, matrix number 256219. I'll be continuing the presentation. So, I will explain the population and production data. In Cambodia, the rice sectors have dominated agricultural sector where it can be seen from the statistics at ricepedia.org/Cambodia. 84.4% of the cultivated land in Cambodia devoted to rice. In another way, we can say that most of the agricultural land in Cambodia planted paddy, where it also contributes in job opportunities in Cambodia. There are around 80% of Cambodian farmers cultivate rice for the needs of subsistence. Another statistics that also shows that Cambodia's paddy sector is improving over the time frame of rice production. In the wet season, it rose by 7.1% per year from 1994 to 2008, while in the dry season, rice production also increased by 5.8% per year from 1994 to 2008. In Cambodia, rice is grown in 4 distinct habitats, which are lowland rainfed, upland rainfed, deep water, and irrigated. The rice production in Cambodia reached a high peak at 2.8 million hectares in 2010 compared to 1.9 million hectares in 1995. The proportion had rose from 15% in 2006 to 25% in 2010. Next is the SSL, which is known as self-sufficiency level. SSL is the level of local output to supply localized market demand. As an example, if there are 30% of local consumption can be supplied by local beef production, which means the SSL for beef production is 30%. However, if the SSL exceeds 100%, it indicated the local production exceeds local demand, and it means that it is suitable for export. Next is the calculation of SSL. The calculation is very easy to understand. From the equation, SSL is equal to the production divided by the production plus import and minus export. So, as you can see, there are 2 equations. The another one, where it has plus or minus stock in it, is to measure the SSL when there are stocks in stock. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you. I will pass the presentation to my friend.
Hi, my name is Maridatul Fadiha binti Abdullah. My metric number is 255735. I will presenting about issue and challenge about rice and paddy status in Cambodia. Cambodia is located between the 2 global meteorological systems, rendering it vulnerable to climate change impacts. There is some scientific evidence that climate change, with less floods and more droughts, would make the northern and western parts of the world drier. The first one, project climate change impact on agriculture. Cambodia farming is highly vulnerable to climate change. Agriculture's unique climate change challenge include change in rainfall pattern. Wet seasons are expected to be shorter, but with higher level of rainfall, whereas dry seasons are extended and drier. Will lead to change in the distribution of precipitation between regions. Traditional cropping practice will be influenced by the change in the duration of seasons, along with the delayed start of the wet season after a longer dry season. Cambodia, floods and droughts are significant influence on the development of rice. Report rice crop regions that in different years has been affected by floods and droughts. This phenomena occur with some regularity, and there could be floods and droughts in 1996 and 2002 in the same year. 3 consecutive years of major flooding are also occurred in 2000 till 2002 period. Climate change will have significant impacts on poorer rural households, as well as the capacity to meet government targets for increased rice production and export. A recent economic study showed that annual mean net revenue dropped with a temperature increase at 1 Celsius. The study also points to the stability of land tenure as the key factor in agricultural productivity. Effect on the yield of rice is projected to be important, demonstrated that rice yields will decrease depending on various seasons and scenarios. In both high and low emission scenarios, and will continue to decrease within a range of 20 until 70% of current production. Increased salinity expected for coastal areas may not be able to cope with the current agricultural technique. Increased occurrence of livestock disease mainly due to a shortage of water and pasture land and a long distance from livestock source of water. Since larger livestock are important investment and service mechanism for farmers, this type of impacts can have serious consequence. They force individuals into debt and reduce their financial safety nets, which, when faced with other crises, expose them to an inability to access cash. For increased pest and disease incidents, change in temperature, precipitation, seasonal trends, and changing duration of the growing season and ecological system have the potential to increase the threat of pests and disease to agriculture. Increase in temperature will boost crop pathogens grow rate and increase reproductive generation per crop cycle, making the crop more vulnerable. The competitiveness of certain weed species may be improved by increased level of CO2. Cambodian catch fisheries are particularly vulnerable to climate change-related change in temperature and hydrological flux. This change could have a major effect on the pattern of migration, breeding, and spawning, while adding pressure to vital fishing ecosystem. In the main river system, flooded forests in the Tonle Sap, floodplains, and deep pools. For agricultural and rice and paddy related policies, the royal government of Cambodia has made a firm commitment to ensure that the rectangular strategy phase 2 continues to be applied. Food and rice policy concerns related to development and producer incentive, processing technology, and demand are a significant and urgent concern of policy makers. The first one is production expansion by yield intensification as well as area expansion. Most of the initial output expansion happened by area expansion as technical levels remain limited. The second one is there appears to be insufficient understanding in practice of the key factors preventing direct export of rice from Cambodia. And the third one is re-engineering the value chain of rice can help compete in the regional and world markets. And the fourth is, in the short term, the strategy should be to channel imports through structured channels. Cambodia also needs to analyze import substitution policies for some of this input in the longer term. The problems of producer incentive is often posed, and this is the best served by investment in activities of the form of public goods. R&D, extension service, irrigation, electricity, and rural roads are all good investment. The sixth is there is also a case for the implementation of a policy of market stability as well as social safety nets. And then we move to the add-on supply chain related. Rice is the dominant crop in Cambodian agriculture. It occupies more than 80% of cultivated land and is the most important agricultural export commodity. The government of Cambodia has no market interference or market management mechanism for domestic rice marketing. For the farmers, there are several constraints on the production of rice, such as the quality of seeds, the outbreak of pests, the flood increases, and the lack of labor. For the collectors, some collectors have access to loans from the bank, from money lenders with an interest rate of 1.4% per month. Collectors must wait many hours to sell to rice miller. The weight and loss quality of their rice loss. Competition rice price from collectors to collectors, often even they lose. They force them to buy rice at a high price. Several restrictions that have been placed on rice millers. Nevertheless, millers face the issue of lack of raw material for milling. So overall, several players in the rice value chain in Cambodia were involved in the production of rice. Different marketing networks were established by rice farmers, rice millers, traders, wholesalers, and retailers. There were some production constraints for each player in the chain, such as lack of resource.
What type of climate change affecting paddy? Temperature and precipitation have been known as the primary determining factor to influence rice production in climate change. Non-climate variables such as fertilizer, water, cultivar, and soil fertility cause a 40% difference in rice yield in Cambodia, while climate change will affecting the remaining 60%. Cambodia is an agricultural nation that is regarded as one of the most vulnerable to climate change in the region. The most recent extreme weather conditions associated with climate change in Cambodia are droughts and floods. In the Mekong Basin, floods are always related to typhoon and heavy rain, and drought usually coincides with El Nino event. A practical definition of droughts helps in identifying the phenomenon and in initiating timely and effective responses. Naturally, between November and April, Cambodia experiences an annual dry season, which does not constitute drought, and the annual wet season from May to October usually causes large tracts of land to flood in the floodplain area. It is important to assist in maintaining biodiversity, fish stock, and soil fertility. Farmers who own land suitable for deep water rice plow their soil at the beginning of the wet season and scatter rice seed. This crop receives adequate local rainfall in the ideal season to allow 6 or more weeks of growth before mid-July. They are then at an advanced stage of maturity to allow them to elongate rapidly enough to keep pace with the Mekong River related rising floodwater.
So we move to the innovation decision-making system. Cambodia has been reforming agriculture in many developed countries. It has spread innovations that had already exist but outside of developed nations had not. Cultivation. Cambodia achieved cereals crop of approximately 16.33% of land area at 882 to 86 hectares in 2016. In 2011, except Thailand, the numbers decreased by about 75.38% in 2016. Cambodia has a land area of about 170,500 to 520 square kilometers. Indonesia has the highest land area in the region. Cambodia has the smallest surface area in the Southeast Asia. For the rice production, mechanization plays an important role in the response to labor shortage in the recent agricultural sector. Land preparation by agricultural machinery covered 90 to 3.5 million hectares of rice production. For use of agricultural machinery, manual tractors will continue to be popular in rice and vegetable production. Manual tractors are a transitional technology between draught animals and tractor. They are exceptionally useful for paddling, planning and preparation tillage, and seedbed preparation. For scattered and limited land plots, they are often the most powerful method of mechanization. For animal waste management, MAFF has concentrated on advancing 100,433 kills of 12 provenance.
For conclusion, Cambodia has a strong tradition of production of rice and a competitive advantage, with relative political stability and access to be better varieties and other input. Farmers have been able to increase the area under cultivation and in particular the yield per hectare, so that overall output has increased by more than 5% since 1990. Research has been shown that climate variables, including temperature and rainfall, may have an impact of up to 60% on the production of the rice in Cambodia. The development of the irrigation system and the advancements of rice cultivation management and procedure, such as the proper use of fertilizers and the prevention of pests and weeds will also help to minimize the adverse effect caused by climate change. The recommendation for certain adaptation and mitigation measure to plan for and rebound from natural hazards and disaster, in particular drought and floods. In the sense of long-term impact of climate change adversely affecting the agricultural sector, in particular rice production, which are taken from research findings.